welcome to this week's community show. I am your host, Martin Musiime, and today we are talking about the high unemployment that we have in this country and the world over, and also the rising cost of living. It has been rising for a very long time. It is continuing to rise, and it is a concern for very many people in this country and in the world over. World leaders are meeting now and again to discuss this impasse. In Uganda, the same is happening, but there seems to be no pause. So joining me to discuss this is a panel of distinguished people, Muntu Awansi people who are always in the communities, who feel the pinch of the rising cost of living, but also who interface with unemployment on every single basis. So people ask them for jobs, their family members, some of their family members are perhaps unemployed, they interface with unemployment every day, and they're able to see what goes on in our communities. I'll begin with introducing Sarah Bireete, whom I will ask to introduce herself.
Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance, an employer, but also a volunteer. And in my other life, I'm a farmer and a roadside activist.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Martin, and my colleagues. My name is Elizabeth Mabonga. I retired civil servant, but not tired. Currently, I manage my life in doing so many things as a farmer, a business lady, and also I'm still serving the Lord God in the wider community. I'm one of those sitting in one of the commissions in the new city of Mbale. And also I do a lot of women activities, and most of the least in society, the widows and their orphanages. As of now, I also am a good church goer and I love God. And I do a lot in helping people to know that He created us, He has a purpose. And therefore, the issue we're going to discuss this morning or this afternoon, it's all about reversing and knowing that we did not come here as a mistake or by the way, but when we go back to the owner, who is God, He can give us solace.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Brian?
Yes, I am called Brian Atuheire. I run an organization called the Africa Initiative on Food Security and Environment. We deal in climate change. I am also a political activist. I am not just a human rights activist. I'm also a political activist who belongs to the Forum for Democratic Change, FDC. And I believe that we shall have a better discussion. I am not a church goer. I'm not a heavy church goer. I don't believe in that much, but I believe in love and humanity.
Thank you for the too much information you've given us, Brian. Okay, I want to begin this conversation by asking all of you, and you'll answer, following each other. How is the situation where you are now? How are you dealing with it? What are you seeing? Just tell us in regard to today's discussion. What is on ground? We shall begin with you, Brian.
Yes, Martin, I think there's nothing new. Only that now the pinch has gone to you, the elites, who have always enjoyed the goodies. So you want to discuss your problems and think it's everyone's problem. The poor man in Uganda has always faced that problem. It's not, it of course, has certain things for him, but now that they have pulled you into the circle, you feel that unemployment now is there, the salaries you're getting are no longer enough, so you must discuss these things. But for a border rider who parts way with 1,400 per liter taken for them to ride you to work, he has felt the high taxation levels, and therefore face, and therefore is even unable to be employed because they cannot have the basic minimum for them to even run their industries and border borders. For a person who has been working in a saloon, also using a generator, has been parting where when fuel was 4,000, for them they were paying already 1,400, meaning for every liter, which should have been 2,600, you are parting away with 1,400. So they have always faced these things, and of course, it's better for all of us to be engaged since they've been engaged alone. The elites had thought they were safe. Now that all of us are not safe, we're going to do more actions and be more serious. Since we are just by our own mercy. That's one. Two, in 2012, 2016, I was a Secretary General of the Employed Youth of Uganda, and we are running a movement of unemployed youth, saying, can we be employed? Can we have some employment? Can the policies be better? And people call it political activism, partisan politics. But now that you think it is something to discuss, I am happy to discuss it. For me, it's not a new thing. I've been part of these narratives and part of these things for a very long time. But of course, I am happy that even Musiime, who is not in the tie today because lawyers like ties, is discussing things that the streets have always discussed. So it's time to enjoy the discussion and also enjoy the heat. It's tight everywhere. I have been telling people, I was in Kanung the other week. I was happy to meet people say, but Brian, what you told us was true. I said, but I told you now, a person goes to dig in a garden, works for 5,000 and cannot buy a bar of soap. They rather buy a piece of soap. So because a bar of soap is 10,000. So when for you to have a piece of soap, half of the soap of a bar of soap, you dig the whole day and they give you 5,000, you go and buy a piece of soap. If you want the whole bar of soap, there are 2 days in a week to dig to get a bar of soap. That's what it means for a local man. So that's where we are. And I don't think that we're going to change any soon, because when you look at the fuel prices, for example, the other country that we are near to is Rwanda. Rwanda's fuel in Ugandan shillings is at petrol is at 5,300. While in Uganda, like in the remote Kanungu where I come from, it is 6,400 a liter. So it means that the next person to the region in terms of fuel, there's 1,000 shillings difference in terms of tax, in terms of the price. So Uganda is also disadvantaged because of its political atmosphere and the unwillingness of the political elite and the political captors that we have to manage Uganda and therefore manage citizens better and give them what they can have. I think we are managing more of a political crisis than a price commodity crisis or an employment crisis.
Thank you very much, Brian. You've a bit preempted, but we shall still go back to that. Sarah, please tell us what is on ground.
Well, Martin, what is on ground in summary is that Ugandans cannot afford life and government is doing nothing. If you look at the best cost of, for example, beans at 4,000 a kilo, matoke at 25,000, you have wheat, where a majority of the urban population feed on what is commonly known as commando. You have wheat going to close to 10,000. You have the prices of cooking oil basically at 10,000, soap 10,000. So if you look at the life of the common person, basically every price of every commodity has doubled, including fuel. And fuel has a multiplier effect on all other commodities because people need to transport food from the market, from the farm to the market. So basically the life of the urban poor is unbearable. The rural poor, whereas they have an advantage of majority growing food, we have had prolonged droughts. People's maize has dried at flowering level, and that prolongs the situation of famine. In Karamoja, you have 50% of the population starving, 20% children, 20,000 children dying of starvation and malnutrition. You know, you can imagine the pain of a parent looking at their starving child up to the time of death, and you bury one child after the other because you cannot feed them. So this is the nature of the country we are talking about. Brian thinks the people who earn salaries have been a bit comfortable, but they are not. If you look at the statistical data, a salary earner, a basic salary earner has been reserving 12% of their earnings for fees, clothing, and other luxuries, including going in a restaurant once in a while. But now they spend all their money on 3 items: rent, because the prices of rent have gone up, rent, food, and transport. They do not have money for medical. They do not have, and many of the houses, including referring to a report by Atuheire, 50% of the houses are having 1 meal a day, and 37% are going a day, food day without food. So this is the situation on the ground, Martin.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for the statistics and giving us what is on ground. Elizabeth, what is on ground from your standpoint?
Thank you. I was saying the situation on the ground is not far different from what my 2 colleagues have tried to elaborate. However, like I said, from my point of view, these things are global. And like I stated in my own introduction, that even I read the Bible has stated it well, that in the last days, you will see so many things happening. Therefore, ranging from social, economic, and what have you, we have to face it. However, governments which have been in the third world country, under development, definitely they will face it squarely in a real harsh manner. In my own situation, as I'm sharing with you, like I said, it's not far different. We can see, because I'll start from the point of view talking about basics in their families. As a community development worker, as a person who has ever earned a salary, as a farmer, as I have done all sorts of things. But now in Uganda, barely people are working from hand to mouth. Even when Brian has already stated that people earn salaries, leave alone those who have cheated, corrupted themselves, bribed, taken money left and right. Even then, they are not also in any better situation, because even when they have taken a lot looting, in other words, they're also facing the same fuel, high prices, the food, and the rest. But when I want to talk about the common rural, urban people, we are talking about the community, the real grassroots people, really they are facing it hard. One, most of us, we know that Uganda is an agricultural country, and right now the climate changes that we've had over time, it has again caused us a little bit of hiccups. I remember when COVID came in my own region here in Masabaland, we were never given any handouts, but people were able to survive even without a lot of movement, because they had a lot of food on themselves. But now in a situation where the drought came in abruptly, prolonged, drought, and even when the rain comes, they come in a way of destroying the plants and crops. The situation is not either good. Like my friends have already said, I don't want to repeat. Every commodity, house commodity, the basics, they are really being sold at high levels. Some people have resorted now to doing without certain things like soap. They have resorted to getting certain herbs to use in cleaning themselves because they really want to wash. Let alone when we look at the issues of health. Because when you do not eat well and you are stressed, definitely the chances of you getting sick are high. Time and again, we've seen mothers now, right now, dying simply because they cannot even afford the least even buying a Panadol for themselves and their families. Therefore, as Ugandans, we are not exceptional. These are global trends. However, nations that have high levels of reserves in their nations, they are doing well. They can subsidize on fuel. They can subsidize on food. For example, in my town, a kilo of posho I hear now it is about 3,000 shillings. And how much money, like Brian has done it. Most people are living on casual laboring. You earn very little, and yet you have to spend. The demand and supply chain can never really be in your favor. Therefore, as Ugandans, as we speak about this unemployment thing, the issue is we have very many factors that have raised, and in our nation where now so many things have happened. One, we need now to look at ourselves individually. What are you selling in the market every day? And be able to buy maybe a quarter of a portion and maybe the piece of soap like others have said. Needless to say, we do not grow oil, although we have oil reserves in Uganda, and I don't know what they are doing, yet we hear rumors that they have already been opened. Therefore, our nation and the people in Uganda, if we really look at the government would have done, and they have lots of programs they bring in. For example, Mioka, now we have a parish model, but they do it for themselves. And really, for me, I would believe if we tried to approach in managing the crisis of unemployment, we would get there, because we are now producing the white collar sons and daughters who are looking for jobs, which jobs have become so few with the corrupt tendencies in Uganda, segregation, tribalism. Personally, I'm one of those people. While I worked in government, we rolled out a decentralization. And we thought that the decentralization were taking services in other people, but instead we have distanced it. If you are not, you do not belong to that ethnic group, maybe your father is one of the commissioners, you will not get a job. And even if you also have to part money, people are buying jobs. How do you expect a person who has spent 10 million to become maybe that's even little work, not even high paid office work? How do you expect them to give you the best service? So the situation in Uganda is appalling, and I wouldn't want to also say that it is well. Even those who have stolen, yes, they have their money, but soon those who have been working for them, they will stop working and they will have nothing to buy in that market. Anyway, as we shall talk about the factors, and maybe we shall also come to some.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We shall talk more about the issue of unemployment in our second segment of this show. For now, I want us to continue focusing on the cost of living, that is very high in Uganda today. However, you've mentioned a number of things, fuel, which also Sarah talked about, and I will, as we begin to discuss in detail, I'll ask Brian to tell us whether Uganda has oil reserves. But needless to say, how did we come to this situation of having the cost of living? Things are very expensive. Many of you have highlighted what is on ground from where you stand, but we want to know why we are where we are. Some have attributed to a number of things, and quote, President Museveni at a number of occasions has said that this is natural. This is, it is normal for things to go, that this is just a natural thing and it will come to pass. So, Brian, let me begin with you. What is the cause of all this?
First of all, Museveni taina cha tugamba. There is nothing can tell us. Mama Mbabazi, in his manifesto in 2016, had things like food reserves, oil reserves. Basically just talked about food reserves and oil reserves. To the extent that when we had COVID here and people were locked in their homes, the first instinct was to beg not to get from our reserves. There is not, you see, a parent that thinks about, he likes being called Jaja, Daddy, those things of his. A parent must be able to keep for his children things they will eat in times of crisis. If he has nothing to tell us, as Sirike and we are going to be okay with him. We know he's reckless and not the reserves we talk about. No, you don't even have the money reserves at Bank of Uganda. That's why they cannot even contain inflation. What are you talking about reserves? If they cannot even have reserves that should be at Bank of Uganda, they don't have oil reserves, no food reserves, even knowledge banks, which are schools and universities, are not working. So there's no bank or something like a reserve for Ugandans. Just forget about the word reserve for Uganda. If you want reserves, you must deal with it politically, not dealing with it while discussing, soothing, and saying, you see, things will be okay. Never, never, never. So I think that the oil, that the reserves, forget them. But when I was talking about salaries, I did not mean that salary earners are okay. I meant for them, they could manage the basics, that car rent, that food, that transport. But people have been tracking. Walk to work in 2011 was about fuel prices. So what, and we have always been increasing in terms of oil prices. And never to forget that the bar of crude oil has just gone, is actually down. But the politics, the taxation policies of these countries, of course, they want to hide behind the Russia-Ukraine thing, then hide behind COVID. But we have had oil contestation and fuel contestation since 2011. Not only now, it's 11 years ago. There was no Russia, there was no COVID-19. So you remember before the Russia-Ukraine war, they showed us truck drivers playing football in Maraba, and they said those, because that when they manage URA manages to clear the trucks, fuel is going to go down. Didn't you hear them, Martin? Then they tell us that when those trucks are finally released in the country, we are going to have fuel down. So they have been having excuses of hiding behind. Like I said in my previous talk, we have a problem because the next person to the next country to the region in terms of prices of fuel, we have a difference of 1,000 shillings. Rwanda 5,300, Uganda 6,300. That cannot be just COVID and Ukraine war. The fuel that goes to Rwanda passes through Uganda. It's cleared in Uganda. There is more transport involved, more clearance is involved. Why is that the fuel prices at the fuel pump prices in Rwanda are lower, but the ones of Uganda are high? It's just the politics. But of course, the elites, like I've said, like you, I'm not saying you, the elites want to discuss these things as if it's something, it's serious. It's a crisis we have. We have even when Sarah is talking about people paying fees, you pay fees to get what? When 75% of the students that go to school P1 cannot finish P7. So it means you pay, and in the middle, you cannot even get a child to finish P7. So it means, even as you talk about unemployment, then you're producing 70%, above 70% of the students who finish primary school. That means 70% of our population is challenged. They cannot get any job because they're not skilled, and you just have HFS economy. Now, the influence of HFS economy, because if you don't finish P7, you're not at HFS, you can't read, you can't write. There is a report recently that shows that actually we had P3 pupils cannot read basic and things and write basic figures and letters. So it's the bigger challenge than wanting just to look at this crisis. And it's going to depend if you don't collect where we should collect. And the correct thing is to collect our politics. If you collect the politics, you then create institutions that are stronger, that manage the economies in terms of the shocks. You hear in Kenya people saying, Cabinet Secretary this has said this about this. Here a minister doesn't know what to say. In Uganda, Dabanja says something, and those fishermen of his, then he also says some things. You find the vice president has a position which is not the same as the speaker, and everybody, we are being managed like you know there is managing cattle in a crash. There is also managing them karanda. You release them, to go and eat anywhere. They'll get grass, whether in your farm or another people's farm. So Uganda are like those cows that the owner has no farm, excuse me, and releases them to go to feed on other people's farms. Whether the other person beats you from there, or we are just on our own. And like Sarah said, the economy cannot work for us if the politics is not ours. The problem also, we want to control the economy. When it's called political economy, you control the politics and they control the economics. You cannot control the economics if you don't have the politics. Do you have the politics, Martin? Do you have a say? Does your vote count? All those things are important while saying these things. But what I don't want us to always manage. People get malaria and take Panadol, and of course the headache will be down. The fever will be down, but for about 6 hours. If you don't take which is bitter, and the real medication for these things, I think is correct. I will be taking away from. I'll be taking away very many times away from your catering of us wanting to discuss what you want to hear in your spaces, but it is the point that is wrong. If you don't collect it, forget. It's the because otherwise the first step to reducing these things is standing up and saying the 1,400 you get from fuel. Let's reduce it and remain getting 700 and reduce on taxation on fuel. You see, and then you have maybe 1,000 wavered off. Now fuel goes back to 5,000. That's manageable. As you could, because what has changed for people to manage life in Uganda since the start of this, since the crisis has been on, but since the escalation of the crisis, and I think it's going to be worse by the end of the year. Maybe 10,000 shillings. Martin might not go to change for Christmas. You will remain in Kampala, and then your mother, who has been thinking things are okay, you'll tell them you cannot afford to go to change because transport is unaffordable. Yet you have been working the whole year. That's why I want to go higher, so that you, the Martins, me, and others who get salaries can be controlled. Because we have left these things to be for people. I was at office the other day and I asked a woman who works with us. I said, "Do you know Vince OpenNet?" The woman did not know. Like for me, that's basic. For me, that's what I can say. Don't think this escalating prices are away from our politics. And as we're in that crisis, people are buying 2.8 billion cars to just come for official functions. And as people like Agatha talk about them,
I want to cut you.
As I finish, as people like Agatha talk about them, there is the money to trade them. Can you imagine?
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian. And that's really unfortunate that when people talk about these things, people who do not want the truth continue to witch hunt them, which is something that is not only undemocratic, but also heinous. Directly connected to what Brian has been saying, I want to quote President Museveni on Labor Day celebrations. He's quoted to have stated, and I begin quote, "This problem is both man-made due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and can also be attributed to natural calamities like COVID-19, which disrupted distribution channels," end quote. That is what Museveni is quoted, at least by the Nile Post of 13th May, to have said. Now, going to you, Sarah, in regard to what the problem is. The president is saying it's natural calamities like COVID. Then he also brings in Russia. But also, it seems from what Brian has been saying, Uganda's situation is a bit unique. Even before Russia invaded Ukraine, the fuel prices in Uganda had started going high, apparently because truck drivers were on some sort of industrial action or were not moving. The trucks were not moving in Uganda very well. Do you agree with what the president says, that it is natural calamities and then Russia, or there are other reasons?
Martin, I will quote the same words of the president on this year's State of Nation address. when he was sharing the parable of the fool man and the wise. He said the foolish man builds his house on sand, but the wise one builds his house on a firm foundation. Countries that are blaming Russia and the Ukraine war 100% on the crisis of the cost of living have simply built their houses on sand. It's like a strong wave. When a strong wave comes, houses which are built with the furnace structures will collapse, will be blown away. But houses which are firm will not be blown away by a strong wind. This is what is happening. I know globally there is a rise in the cost of living. The UK is in a crisis with a crisis of legitimacy for the prime minister. The US is struggling with the cost of living. Yes, Ukraine, to some extent, can be blamed on the spike in the cost of living. But the question then remains, how prepared were we before the Ukraine war? The Ukraine war, you have said clearly that our rise in cost of living, especially sparked off by rise in cost of fuel, started way before the Ukraine war on the crisis of failing to manage COVID at the borders. And our fuel went up to almost 5,000 and it never came down. We have now the Kenyan elections 1 month away. Kenyan elections create a lot of speculation around transportation, stability, and the political risk for the business enterprise. We are going to have another spike, and possibly fuel might shoot up to 8,000. Because as a country, our foundation is on a sand basis. Other countries are trying what they can to mitigate the struggling citizens in their respective capacities. Tanzania has consistently said they will mitigate the cost of fuel in order to mitigate the cost of living and cushion citizens from starvation direct at the pumps. And the president has said she will do that as long as it is necessary. It doesn't matter how long it takes. The cost of fuel in Tanzania is an equivalent of our 3,500 Uganda shillings, when for us we had 6,500. So that brings down the cost of food as well as transportation for citizens to go to work. Uganda has said they would do nothing. Maybe because the wind has blown a shaky house, a ramshackled house. Because if you look at our indebtedness, which is at 54%, even after manipulation of figures, you look at the controversy over the population size in Uganda, because of name dropping, that the regime wants to feel good that they've attained the middle income status. They are manipulating our population, which was recorded at 45.7 million in 2020. They have reversed it back to 42 million. Can they account for the missing 3.7 million? Where did they go? Just because they want to announce middle income. So you have this leadership. One, that is extravagant. Two, that does not have lost touch with reality. Three, they don't care what you go through. But four, they like posturing, like the posturing about middle income status. When you have 8.6 million living below the poverty line and 37 million people that sleep hungry on a daily, 37%. That sleep hungry on a daily basis. So maybe when they look around and see their relatives and associates living in extravagance at the expense of a taxpayer, then they feel good and they want to announce that everybody is okay in the country. So this is really the crisis that we are faced with. It is a leadership crisis. And it is important for the viewer to note that countries like Kenya have gone out of their way to negotiate cheaper fuel direct from Saudi Arabia. And they have sealed the deal, and they are going to further bring down the cost of fuel in Nairobi. But in our situation, even there is no negotiation going on, we are on our own.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that, and also for reminding us of the proverb that those who build their houses on sand indeed have no future. Thank you for that. And in regard to the middle income, yes, in fact, after the president said that we had attained middle income status, the World Bank shortly after disputed that information, because reaching middle income is not just by word of mouth. Middle income follows certain criteria, among which the income per capita should be proven, to be of a certain standard, which in Uganda's case, it's not at the threshold that warrants income per capita. So we are not yet in middle income, as the president, for popular reasons, would want to assert. On Saturday, it must have been the 2nd of July, the Minister for Local Government, while appearing on Capital Gang, insisted that Uganda, after being told that the information about middle income is not true, insisted that for them, as far as they're concerned, Uganda has reached middle income. If World Bank has different information, that's up to them. But for them as cabinet, they know that Uganda reached middle income status. So you see people who are a bit detached. Like Sarah said, for them, when they see people around them doing well, they think everyone else is doing well. You see people who are detached from reality, but also from the ground. So I'm coming to you, Elizabeth. People have, stated what they have stated, that Uganda's situation looks unique, actually. It's not just the war of Ukraine and Russia. It's not just about COVID, but they have also diagnosed it and found that it is poor leadership. As you've also noted, that as they have noted, Uganda has the highest cost of fuel in the region, even perhaps in sub-Saharan Africa, with the exception of maybe Zimbabwe. So please, what is your take on that, Elizabeth? What could be the cause?
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, and our colleague Brian. Sometimes when you talk about certain things, they drive us into some funny emotional feelings. But the truth is that there's no lie in what my colleagues have said. The very first thing, like I have seen around, because of these 30 years I was of age knowing, we have tried to politicize each and everything. And when a good program comes, because of poor leadership, like we said, they will be at the helm. And when they lead, that it is already, they begin when it is already a program that is not going to benefit many. Personally, I have tried to summarize this. It is very true. Uganda has never cared to plan for the future. Like we've seen in the trends of population, you cannot expect that you've been around 30 every other day, men and women who are young, they have become adults, there's population outburst. But what have you done about it? And this business of now telling lies the public, like we know the whole world, because COVID is a hoax, wanting to be like the others. It's like a poor woman with a poor husband, but always wanting to be like the rich man guy in the village. You'll cause problems for your marriage and even your children and everything like that. Therefore, all these reasons, points my colleagues have brought out, they are very true. We have had no common ground as leaders, like you stated it, Martin. The Prime Minister wakes up and states, tomorrow you hear she's been called in State House and she's changing the ground. Therefore, as leaders, if we're not consistent with what we tell people in the programs we bring to people, and in any case, most of these things we do for our own. For example, when they brought creation, is it wealth creation initially, it was a community thing when the owners had to look for their leadership, but it went into the army. That is just a paying back to people who have fought and helped us to stay along in this kind of regime. Therefore, me personally, if we want to mention these factors, there are so many and they are irritating. But what I wanted to say that Uganda for a long time, the so-called economists whom we have, yes, they do a good job, but they do not have the power of control over what they bring in to implement. At the level of implementing each and every program, it is distorted by bringing in those they seem to manage and managing for their own selves and stomachs and their families. So poor leadership, like many like my colleagues have stated, is one reason. Failure to plan for our future well, and as leaders having no common ground. For example, how do you account for a parliament of over 4? I think there are now 415, even more. They are being paid, they are paying themselves, they are taking the taxpayers' money. You know, everything is done in their own favor. I do not know whether these colleagues of mine ever think about the people who give them their votes. Because Uganda is not a poor country, for your information. If only we had good leadership now like this lady in Tanzania, we will be above because we have the natural resources, people work a lot, they are business oriented, they are hard in doing what they want to, they are committed. But where there is poor leadership, you can never achieve. Like I said, we have no controls. In Uganda today, you wake up, you bring any price on the market, you sell any item you want and nobody cares. You know, when we liberalized Uganda's economy, allowing people to do what they want, that was another way of killing Ugandans. Talk about taxation. Today they are taxing even the water, everything. Even now houses, for those of us who are in the peri-urban, they are coming to tell you before you erect a house, there must be some money paid. Is it per foot, if it is a flat, you know, those kind of, and literally, they are robbing Ugandans, indirectly or directly. So, all these things we are talking about, it is one thing, poor leadership. Staying in power for a longer time, I don't think when our parents do not die prematurely at the age of 40, 55, and they live up to 100, they become they become liabilities to our lives. If they have planned their lives well, we earn from them and we even live good with them around us. So staying in power is not the issue, but poor management of government business, putting inefficient people in places where they are not supposed to belong. You find somebody has no training, no knowledge, ability, but they are managing big offices. They end up managing it like you are managing your farm of 5, 3, 4 chicken. Therefore, there are so many things, and I do not want to dwell about reserve, because in a well-planned nation, you know that certain times will come, drought will come. These are some of the others we cannot control God, although we pray, but in his own timing, God will cause certain things to happen. And even me, as I told you, a person who believes in God, he tells me, he did not promise that challenges will not come, but he has promised me that when challenges come, he'll be with me. And meaning that I must work with him in excellence, in wisdom, in perfecting a situation which would have maybe caused hazard to my family or my community. Therefore, as my friends have said, socially, politically, economically, what have you, I would say, you only refuse to say that we are in a failed state. Let me even lower my voice. Because when they hear, they say, oh, she said, but that is a fact. It's like a husband who fails to even buy a toothpaste, but he continues to brag around, yet the woman is working hard to bring those other things. So this, having said that, I appreciate that in Uganda, if only I told you in the beginning, we do the bottom-up approach. Me as a committed women worker, when you work with these people, I organized the women, and the local women were able to raise their only 1,500 shillings to the tune of 144 million. And they saved it by themselves. They loaned for it. They have improved their state. So what defeats Uganda government to help its people? It is laissez-faire. The attitude now, which is now negative, we are here to stay, who will touch us. We have it all. Like my colleagues have mentioned, but truly speaking, if only even Papa in his statements, because these are political statements, which may I know they always make to police the people we are hearing. I no longer now, like Brian said, that he has nothing. He has something to tell us, but he knows that he's playing his games. Which games one day, like I told you, in this universe, let nobody ever lie to you. My brother Brian talked of love and humanity. Who told you to love? Is it not God? God is love. He gave us his only son. And therefore, Uganda is the first thing. Let's love ourselves. Let's not allow stress to drive us out of doing the little things we should do to survive in this turmoil. Because the owners, the government who would do it are not doing. Therefore, I call upon each and every Ugandan. We still have the hope that if Ugandans started our own movement of trying to improve on our own lives, we can, although politically we need their hand. You know, they tell us that government has all instruments of coercion when they want what they want to be driven. But one day, God will remember that we are not even poor. I don't want to say we are poor. People have mismanaged our resources. And therefore, the Lord God who put us on this
Thank
planet,
you very much.
us, and he made us a boundary that we are Ugandans, he will one day cause us. Because I can see all of me, I was a younger girl.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I want to cut you short. Yes, I want to cut you short, Elizabeth. Thank you for that. I want to come back to you mainly when we are looking for the solution, to this. I remember you at the beginning, you told us perhaps it's the end, it's the end of time. So I want to hear much more about that. And I want to make a clarification from what Elizabeth was saying. Well, government is mandated to among other reasons, to ensure the high sustainable standard of living for people. Okay, it's supposed to provide many of these social amenities. That is part of the social contract. So we cannot just leave it to well, God is important, but we cannot just say we leave it up to God. No, as a citizenry, we are supposed to be actively involved, but also to demand, because we have a contract. And where there's a contract, each each person under that contract.
Which contract, Martin?
We have a social contract.
With who?
The people and the government. Okay.
Through what?
So the government is supposed to act, okay, and provide, because the people also give the government their mandate, but also contribute to the survival of the state through taxes, name it. So under that contract, the government is supposed to act. So what they are doing now is a breach of the contract. But I want to bring in some more information here before I bring Brian and Sarah. Well, still in regard to what people are alleging as a middle income status. In just 2021, Uganda was falling short of its target at going toward middle income, and our gross national income was at $780, okay? Now, it's just that it's just last year, I think June, around last year, June. But miraculously, someone this year, with all the effects of COVID, with with the high unemployment rate, many people falling out of work, someone just wakes up and says Uganda has attained middle income status, and we have a substantial number of people who are earning above $1,036. There is a mismatch there, and the Economic Policy Research Center has made a study about it, and honestly, in all speaking, they hadn't projected the Uganda to reach middle income status by 2022. So the president's information has also been debunked by a number of other agencies, and it is false, it is misleading, it's not true, and it's important that that information is put out there. And our viewers, a lot of information is out, among them that Economic Policy Research Center. You could check out their website, the World Bank. All these institutions have done surveys and indeed concluded that Uganda is not yet a middle income country. Brian, are you on? I want to, as we close this on standard of living and the cost of living, I want to ask, what should we do? Is it time for us to slow down for the usual consumer, for the person who is feeling this pinch? Should we slow down? Should we lower our cost of living or our standard of living among it is even happening in the developed world. The US, people are constantly being encouraged to cut down on their usual expenditure. If a person usually drives to work, they could take a common transport. If a person eats 4 times a day, maybe cut it to 3 times a day. It's important to cut on our, the much we use fuel and, name it. So is it time to reconsider our life?
I think, Martin, one, you don't have a contract with government. A contract with government is through a free and fair, credible election carried, and then your contract with them is voting their manifesto, and therefore you have a contract. So in my case, you don't have a contract with government. Problem, you're tying yourself from people you don't have a contract with. That's one. So there's nothing like contract. You have a gang of rulers, dictatorship, and therefore you have no contract with the dictator. You don't have. That's one. Two, you cut from what to what? What did you have? How do you reduce from 0 to what? To -5. You want people to die because people have been having 1 meal a day. So you want them to cut from 1 meal a day and go to 0 meal a day? What? There's nothing like cutting. It's you must fight for your survival, fight and make sure that you change things. And like I said before, this is a political war. It's not an economic war. Forget about your economics and your English. So the way forward is that we cannot cut. We shall maintain it because we have been living at the minimum. We don't have what to cut from. So because it's like saying, I have my shirt. Can I cut another shirt from this shirt and have 2? It has to be only 1. It can't be 2. Unless I want to make it for my babies. So there's nothing we're going to cut because we have no capacity to cut. Actually, it's government that must cut its expenditure, not us, the citizens, because we don't have anything to cut from. Martin, that's it. We don't have what to cut from. Government must cut its expenditure. Museveni has Kameza money for 2 billion. He must cut to 1 billion or to 700 million. Kameza money. The speaker should not about those cars. You cannot tighten the belt. Like Chris just said, we cannot be tightening our belts as you are tightening yours. You're making yours loose and saying us we tighten ours. That's not possible. And that's it, Martin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian. President Museveni, again, as I come to you, Sarah, is quoted on the same, it was the Labor Day, International Labor Day 2022, May. And I want to quote from a quote, it is Daily Monitor that ran it, where, okay, he said, if there is no bread, eat muogo. quote brackets, that is cassava, Africans really confuse themselves. You are complaining that there is no bread or wheat. Please eat muhogo. I don't eat bread myself. I would understand the president was telling people to cut down on their expenditure and stop spending on luxuries. So, Sarah, don't you think it's important that people cut their, we cut our expenditures, we lower down, we lower our lifestyle? Many people who are used to maybe eating imported things, it's important. It's now high time we began eating organic things from home. Maybe people are used to taking cooking oil in every food of theirs. Now it's important to cut down. So don't you think the president was right in telling people to eat cassava and stop wasting money?
Martin, majority of people don't eat wheat products as a luxury. Some workers who take commando for lunch, some families who take commando for dinner, it is not a luxury. The president said he eats cassava in his home. But did he tell Ugandans that he spends 1.8 billion every day in that home? And what does he spend it on? His household has himself and his wife, who is a minister, with her own budget, with their domestic workers. They spend 1.8 billion every day. On what? Is that money spent on cassava? 1.8 billion? Is it spent on cassava? Cassava is a nutritious, food that should not be abused. Two, I think largely that statement was a mockery of the suffering of the people. If the president cared just a little bit about Ugandans, he would cut his daily expenditure to 1 billion and have his budget at 365 billion for his household instead of 677 billion for him, his wife, their workers and guests. That is extravagance of the highest order. And then you live large to that extent. I'm sure the president does not even know the cost of fuel because he doesn't buy any. Recently, we saw a clip where he was talking to journalists in Western Uganda. He does not even know about MBs or mobile or internet bundles, data, and how people access the internet sites. He doesn't know because his state house has automatic fast Wi-Fi. Maybe he doesn't even use these gadgets like smartphones because we see him on roadside calls with cartouche phones. And maybe he doesn't need them. But we have people who are engaged in e-commerce. And that clip for me, where he doesn't even know about internet bundles, explains why he has closed Facebook for 2 years. He doesn't even know that young people were earning a livelihood from e-commerce on Facebook. He closes it because his propaganda team abused Facebook regulations. And therefore, all the 18 million Ugandans who use Facebook must suffer. He has rendered people jobless. He doesn't even know that the biggest employer amidst unemployment that he has contributed to is e-commerce. And on these platforms, this is the kind of president we are talking about in the fourth industrial revolution. Does he have capacity to even take us there or plan for Uganda in that digital era? I don't think so. How long will Facebook be closed? How many youth were doing business on those platforms? How many business people were trading on Facebook? How many social media influencers were earning a livelihood on Facebook? And what alternatives are they remaining with? Look at the luxury expenditures of government. 60% of our budget is a wage bill, is a consumption bill. The remaining does debt servicing, and 15% is for development. That's why they are cheating themselves into middle income status, because they have nothing to offer to the people.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And indeed, it's important that government becomes frugal and gives an example. But also another thing is that the gentleman has been out of normal life for very long, perhaps close to 50 years, when he's not a usual human being who interfaces, goes to the shop, buys ordinary things. Some 5 years spent in the bush, perhaps the food was either given by people or looted, and other now 36 years have been spent in office in government, and the presidents are not usually the kind of people you would see on a petrol station or buying things here and there. They are served everything, so it's possible he does not even know how a bar of soap looks like, or things like that. So it's many things. And the other years he was a minister, privileged. Perhaps in 70 stopped living a normal life as a young person before he began his activities, military activities all over the place. Oh, I am okay. So now I'm coming to you, Elizabeth. In your beginning statements, you mentioned that such things perhaps point to something bigger. Maybe it could be the end of time, like you said, that God said that these things will begin to happen as the end of time is about to approach. Do you mind substantiating more on that and close that for purposes of this particular debate before we dive into unemployment? Oh, you are still muted, but as you unmute, yes, because others have given the solution, and others have also said it was important for government to cut expenditure.
Yes.
They have said, they've given other reasons as to how this could end. But then you had said earlier that this is an inevitability that is occasioning an apocalypse. Please substantiate more on that.
Yes, I want to thank my colleagues. They have really, I told you that some of these things, when you talk, they can cause you to emotionally have that feeling, and we talk. They have enumerated a number of things. Before I get back to what you have just said, I want to say, really, even if we really don't have what to downsize, we have something. We are alive. We have food. We have a few things, the amenities in our household. And nobody can tell me now that Elizabeth do this and the other. For example, I had a car, but my car, of course, I sold it for one reason or the other. And now I can either take a border or walk, depending on my pocket. So certain things we do not even have to ask or anybody to tell us, they automatically be done. To live, survival for the fittest, we have to. Coming back to my point, it is very true, it is written in the books of life, that's the Bible. Nevertheless, I told you that the word of God tells us clearly that affliction, we are under tribulation, but a nation which would have planned, like I've told you, has had a touch for its people, would not be going through this harshness like as if we have just woken up. My friends have talked, even you said this guy has been around for a long time. He lost touch of humanity, of reality. You know, when he wakes up and talks about cassava, to us today in Uganda, cassava is being bought because we had some virus which ate it. It's not even something which is a luxury. For us here to buy one tube, it is 2,000 and you must have work. So certain statements are coming as a result of lacking the empathy and living in a world like you are in a utopian world, yet you refuse to see the reality. So coming back to what I said, even when God has said the end times will come, but for those people who are prepared, we can live within our minimum means, but still enjoy our livelihood. But today there are so many things. There is insecurity. There's the hoax of COVID, which they are creating every other day. And we also want to behave like in the global trends to mention in numbers of people who have died of diabetes, pressure, these old cases where we have not attended to. Like I said, Uganda is a very rich country, but simply when a person has lost touch of what they should do rightly, we end up not living rightly. I have seen in the old, men in the and women even have their amenity vehicle, lived longer. Why? They never even went to our hospitals. They used the means available and they lived longer. Therefore, as these children tell people, is God created us in his own image. The word of God tells us in his likeness, whether which religion, whether which tribe, whether race, white, black, brown, we are all under him. That's why no man has ever resisted death. We've seen Ugandans spend lots of billions, trillions of money trying to secure lives of those they think they deserve more than others, but they have never bought it, and they don't even ask why. And this is now the time, whether you are a leader or not, ask yourself, we are here for a short time. And that's why I call on all of us, enjoy maximally, even with your muogo, even with your cup of water with no sugar. Feel good, eat it, because you know however much you cry, those who have held power until the Lord God helps. Because in Uganda today, if it was the vote my friends have talked about, I think we would be having a changeover. But the so-called, like in the constitution, when say power belongs to people, you know, these are statements. You do not even have that power. We've seen now people grabbing acreage of land in the rural here we have had. They go, they fence lots of pieces of land because they have what it takes, their political agenda and all that. But as good people whom God brought here, we cannot keep lamenting foolish, like call it. We are having hearts. People have come to hurt you. You don't also get your hand and put in the fire and say, okay, you are hurting me, let me also burn my hand, which I've been using for food to and from. So as Ugandans, there are so many things, but I have told you, this mismanaging the business affairs of government is what has caused all this. And however much we cry until the Lord God, who has the keys to everything, will one day say, no, Uganda, enough is enough. Here you are. But live alone. If the rapture comes tomorrow, some of us are prepared to go home safely without lamenting, because naked were we brought on earth, and naked shall we leave this earth. Therefore, these things, they are annoying because we know they are there for us and our children. But those who have held the power for some time, they are making it hard for Ugandans to live in and enjoy their world. We know there are global trends. We have inflation, but this would not have really taken us where we are if we had good proper planning and cutting our budgets like Sarah has enumerated. You cannot tell somebody to live on chikumi when for you are spending billions daily. Actually, there's no fairness in it, and there is no equity there. But anyway, this is where we are. Let's agree that it has happened, but I implore the younger people, don't lose on. I know one day things will be good. Thank you.
Yes. Now, thank you for that discussion, my dear panelists. In 20 minutes, we are going to touch on something that is still very pertinent in our country and also the world over, and that is the issue of unemployment. It seems to be continuing, and it is on the rise, of course, exacerbated by COVID, the 2 years of COVID-19, where many countries went into serious lockdowns, and Uganda had one of the most serious lockdowns, if not the most serious lockdowns in the world, where the country was almost closed for 2 years, very few economic activities going on, schools have been closed, many businesses have closed, and there is now, it has, in fact, as people are beginning to recover, we have this serious economic crisis that some have attributed to the war in Ukraine, of course, others to COVID, but it's an amalgamation of a number of factors that are at play. And we see unemployment rate rising. Figures are different, and they put it at different rates, some 9%, 9.5%, and that is majorly the youth unemployment. Others are put it at 4.3%, to name it. So I want to begin with Sarah to point for us a picture of unemployment in this country, and how do we really get better? How do we emerge from this crisis of unemployment?
Only 1 in 10 graduates had a chance to find a job. And most of these were based on technical know-how. But during COVID, the report by private sector foundation has shown that 50% of people had lost businesses in COVID, or either lost the entrepreneurs who were the head of businesses to the COVID pandemic. The report by small and medium income enterprises showed that 70% of women had no chance of returning to business. So that alone is a demonstration of a crisis of employment, both self-employment in terms of businesses and entrepreneurship, as well as finding a job where you can be employed. The service industry was equally largely affected with the loss of revenues, especially the tourism industry and hospitality industry because of lockdowns. Out of emerging from the 2-year pandemic, we had sectors like the entertainment sector that was closed, completely closed for 2 years. From the 2-year pandemic, then we have the fuel crisis and the crisis of cost of living. So you can imagine the trouble that even the surviving employers are going through because of loss of revenue, loss of time to work, and then lockdowns and their own impact. Schools needed rehabilitation at the opening of lockdowns. All these are the million jobs that were on hold because of prolonged lockdowns. And then now cost of living comes in and there is no cash in the movement of our budget cycle. It's even laughable to look at the estimates for revenue collection in this year's budget with the same government fully aloof, acting aloof, saying they cannot do anything about the cost of living. So if you don't ensure the movement of cash in the hands of the people, how do you generate revenue as a government? It is simply self-defeating. But away from that, so you have this loss of jobs that has happened because of COVID and now the cost of living. And I'm sure that our unemployment rates have increased by an estimate of 30%. It is much worse for young people. We see restructuring at even in government and all business levels to be able to have a lean enterprise that is affordable and sustainable amid these hardships. So we are going even to see more loss of jobs. You have people resorting to working from home. That is loss of income for the people engaged in the public transport sector. You have food in the market that people cannot afford anymore. That is loss of income because some of these food items, especially the agricultural products, are perishables that can go bad, that will rot and be thrown away because of the limited purchasing power within the population. So you have all this cocktail within the population affecting incomes, affecting jobs, affecting household incomes, affecting cash flows in the economy, and affecting the cost of lives of the people and the capacity to employ each other in society. So I don't know whether the planners have really sat and thought through all these things and came up with the ways of mitigating them. I know that government thinks that their silver bullet is the parish development model. But given the history of mismanagement, both at central and local government levels by this regime, and it's not surprising to see that there are already corruption cases out of registration for parish development model enrollment. Already there is bribery, there is extortion, even before money comes in. So you can imagine the money grab that will be there for the little money that is being sent to parishes. That is if it reaches, if it manages to move from central government to local. Then the local people are also waiting to grab it. And they are already extorting money from the citizens. So this is the situation of the people, Martin.
Thank you. It's sad, it's gloomy, it's unfortunate actually. Brian, yes, please.
Yes, Martin.
I'm lost of words really. After the diagnosis of Sarah, showing us the unemployment rate, the situation in fact is worse than we would actually expect. Because if you see that 70% of women, largely in the informal sector, have lost work, due to COVID. And then this crisis brought about by the crashing of the economy, it's dire, and women, of course, being affected more because they are at the footstool of the food chain. So if we do not have vehicles to go and pick food from the gardens they have tilted from, their produce, that means they're not getting any income, and that is contributing to the unemployment. And the entire chain is affected. So maybe the rates are even much higher, given that Uganda is largely dependent on the informal sector. So it's a gloomy situation for me. I'm wondering what your assessment is. Please give us the assessment.
You want my assessment on people losing jobs?
The unemployment.
Yes, yeah. You see, first of all, most of the unemployment and caused by COVID-19 was also caused by the way Uganda managed the pandemic. We managed the pandemic to curtail freedoms rather than manage the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to tell you one thing. When I at one time I worked at KCCA, and KCCA was allocated 2 billion shillings to help people manage through the ravaging problems that the pandemic had brought. And to our shock, the minister of Kampala took 1 billion shillings from it. We do not know where that money was taken. When we were asked, when the councillors asked that money should be given to traders to help them mitigate and have other things mitigated, the council, that's when the Minister of Kampala made a decree that the council should not sit again during COVID-19. It never started for another about 42 days or so. So that's how it was. People were, and thirdly, don't talk about COVID. There were people who are working in COVID. There are COVID billionaires in Uganda. You know Musenero. So as well as you say, people lost jobs. Others had their jobs enhanced or had more money at the exposure. So it just increases more inequality of the haves and the have-nots. But it's not that, and you see, the haves, they were never interested in having you work. So you have to learn that. So the learners who were not studying were learners of you and me. Their learners were studying. You know, schools like were open in Kampala, international schools are open, teaching children of the ones who are rich and the ones who are privileged and the ones who are poor were not getting education. So the COVID-19 pandemic is just being used to hide these things here and there. But thirdly, like talking about schools again, and I would not want to leave it out of unemployment, because unemployment and schooling are very, very related. That majority of our political elite in Uganda, their children don't study from here. They study from abroad, right? So if COVID-19 causes closure of schools in Uganda, but schools are open in Nairobi, the UK, and America, are their children studying or they are also at home? The answer is that they will rock you here, the children will go and study. It's just creating more inequality. And of course, unemployment causes more inequality. And they know that when you are employed, you are empowered. It's better to rule people who are unemployed, because they, instead of discussing these things, they are discussing food on the table which they cannot have. And that's what I would want to tell you, that political, for me, I would want to say political management is very important in these matters. And to add on what Sarah was saying, it's more or less of a song that we have had for long. When I was protesting unemployment in 2016, there was no COVID, sir. We have always had unemployment. Our education system is being ravaged, so you can't have anything. So again, to tackle unemployment, you must tackle the politics. I will always say tackle the politics, or fear it and perish.
Elizabeth, please unmute.
Yeah, the issue of unemployment in a third world country would not be at this rate, but I believe there are people who have engineered certain situations to scapegoat using those factors like COVID, like now the war, and yet this is a problem they know we must resolve to help get our people into useful employment. Definitely, unemployment is just, when we state it, is a lack of an individual or maybe a person getting a productive activity. And I don't believe that a person who has two hands can lack. But the mitigating factors, the situation, you know, the environment that surrounds Ugandans cannot make them, even when you work, you get that. Because I remember, I have traveled a bit, but in those nations, people like in Tanzania, you see they are not doing a lot. You look at it, it's like a poor country, but they're enjoying. Why? The little they have maximized the usage and they use it profitably to the benefit of their people. But unfortunately in Uganda, you find that the people who are outside, they come here to do business, they give them tax holidays. When an entrepreneur in Uganda who is emerging wants to do something they cannot permit, or they even frustrate, they even convince, persuade you to take loans. In the long run, you lose your enterprise and you become poor. So the issue of employment, because I told you that it is mismanagement of government business. In a nation where you know the population outcast will come, or just like a family.
Okay, Elizabeth seems to have challenges. We shall have her close the debate later. For now, let's have one round where we are talking about how we go away from here, what is the solution? What are we suggesting? What do we think should be done to reduce the high unemployment? Well, I must stress that it's not unique to Uganda. The unemployment rate is high in many other countries, mainly other countries of sub-Saharan Africa. And youth unemployment is on a constant rise. It's in double digits. So as we conclude, Sarah, what can we do? What can governments do? And individuals, you punched holes in the parish development model, but one would argue it's among the ways government is trying. So what more can be done to really give people jobs, to put people back in the money economy? As you wrap up and also say your final parting shot.
Panelists and dear citizens out there, no country has ever developed because of handouts. We are yet to see any. Countries develop because of principles of democracy, equity, and equitable interventions of development. Just pick an example of teachers who have been on industry action. You get teachers who have studied for the same period of time, at the same level of education, working for the same amount of hours per week, with the same workload, and you pay one 1 million and another one 4 million. In which country do such practices operate? Only in Uganda. You have a leadership that lives in luxury, that lives in extravagance, that thrives on bribery and buying their way in power. As it has emerged, even the money that was paid by cash through parliament as a bribe for passing the budget was received from the Speaker's house. So you have one arm of government, the executive, dead, selfish, extravagant, and thriving on buying their way in power. Patronage, they must move with envelopes. They must move with sacks to buy their way in power. You have a parliament that is now dead, with a leadership that is cut from the same piece of cloth with the executive. And you have the judiciary that is in hands-free mode. They are scared of making decisions. That is the apex of our leadership. In summary, what I'm saying, Brian, we can blame Ukraine, we can blame COVID, but Ugandans have been here even before those crises. What has changed is the magnitude of the suffering of the people. We have a leadership crisis, we have a failed economy, we have extravagant leadership, we have impunity that we must deal with as a people.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Brian? And Brian, maybe you'll also address this. So we are going to have Brian, then Elizabeth will have the final word. Brian, as you come, while we talk about unemployment, while we talk about the high cost of living, we've been seeing government officials throwing parties around and throwing state balls, not state balls, but parties, personal parties, which we believe the money is from the state coffers. We've also seen individuals buying vehicles, official vehicles of over $1 billion. One vehicle like this costing 1.4 billion shillings. And they have not bought one only, they have bought a number of them. So luxury, whereas the economy is doing bad, unemployment rate is high, we continue to see luxuries being on a high in government. So please, Brian, give us your parting shot.
You see, Chief, like Sarah has said, extravagance, corruption, everything we have had, is that the solution cannot be looked. You cannot get a solution from the ones who have caused the problem. That's it. And you see, we don't have to pass through corners. You are either with us or against us. This government is against the people of Uganda. It will not end the unemployment, it will not end the economic crisis, it will not end anything. The people of Uganda have to organize themselves and look and form a movement by themselves and push to have their voices managed by themselves, and the government, they will manage it by themselves. What I'm saying is that we have to make sure and seriously work together to end this impunity by ending the regime actually itself. You can't remain with the cabal, because the cabal cannot create your employment opportunities. I find thinking these people will solve anything is a problem. Like Sarah said, how does the speaker start dishing out money from cabinet, and from Museveni himself? Actually, Museveni is the chief priest of corruption. He doesn't present over a country or an economy. He's president over a corrupt cabal that manages our country and resources. So to expect to have anything from them is a problem. I think that we must first of all stop, discuss unemployment, but discuss its real solution, which is ending bad governance and ending the regime and putting in place, whether it's the president or you, Martin, and we have power over you. We can say, Martin, come back here. Then we have a contract with you, and when you make a mistake, we can terminate. Today, Bolsonaro might resign in the UK because there is a contract between him and the people. I don't know whether you can make Naba and Museveni resign here. We must go there. Then we can talk about unemployment and talk about power dynamics and manage our own affairs. As of now, you have no contract to manage your own affairs. You are the master of your master, who is Museveni, like chicken, like a cock that belongs to a drunkard. Because a cock that belongs to a drunkard, one, a drunkard can be in a bar and say, my friend Martin, I've given you my cock. Or he will come when drunk and having hangover and is dying, and his wife will decide slaughter the cock. Or he'll come drunk and get a stone and hit the cock and the cock dies. So we are like a cock belonging to a drunkard.
Thank you very much, Brian. Okay. Thank you very much, our dear viewers, for being a part of this show that comes every Monday. It's a community show. The conversations are meant to reflect what is among the communities, how they are seeing life, their perspectives of things, and what is generally happening. We hope this will continue to highlight the plight of many community members in this country, to highlight it to the entire world, but also to continue educating people and engaging people into shaping this country and making it a better place for each and everyone. We pray things change. We shall continue to push. We shall continue to do everything in our means to ensure that this country becomes better, to ensure that the standard of living improves and the cost of living, the high cost of living reduces. Also ensure that there is more employment opportunities for people. I have been your host, Martin Musiime, on behalf of, and together with the Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. Thank you very much, our panelists. Thank you, our audience, for tuning in. Till next time, bye.